All right, this is the mindset session 2 of 3. Um, I have, as I alluded to before, the new psychology of success. I have the dates highlighted here. Um, Her first iteration of this book was 2006. And then we have the updated version, which is 2016. And the reason that I did that, which I've already shared, is in reading these last couple of chapters, um, I noted that there were some references that were a bit dated. In the especially now in the sports section, we know Michael Jordan, we know Mia Hamm, we noted those. But in the business section, they mentioned Enron and they mentioned a lot about Lee Iacocca. So I wasn't sure about the age range. I didn't want to assume anything. I don't know who knows those people, but that's why some of the references may seem dated, although the information is still relevant. So that's why I have that. And I'm going to send these slides out after I do the last one. So our schedule is roughly going to be, we're going to do a little bit of review from last week because some folks had some things they wanted to revisit and re-go over. There'll be a brief overview of the weekly readings, which I'll do, and then we're going to tackle chapters 4 and 5. There are fewer, obviously, than we had last week. And then we will have the requisite reflection, discussion, and activity wrap up and talk a little bit about next time. So this was the slide from last week. So this is just to kind of give us a flyover of what we did and what we talked about. We did an intro. People put their names in college roles. We put Carol Dweck's um, bona fides, who she is, where she comes from, her ethos, right, for the humanities people, discussing who she is and why she can write about this. And we gave a small kind of a definition to hang onto with regard to what mindset is, a mental attitude or inclination. Then we went over, this is just the schedule from last week. No need for us to talk about that. Talked a little bit about what chapters 1 through 3 were about. It was an introduction, the underlying science behind it, the influence on learning and performance. And then our food for thought, which I think somebody wanted to revisit, was that in the introduction, Dweck says that a whole organization can have a mindset. And if that's true, what is Chattanooga State's mindset? And I've sort of been mulling over whether or not mindset and culture can be equated. And we don't have to answer that. Brian says no, so the answer is no. So anyway, I saw you. And by extension, what's the mindset of the division or the department where we serve?
Let me just qualify that. I think mindset is a narrow part of the culture, definitely a vital and important part of the culture, but a narrower than culture. That's
Okay.
what I would say.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Okay.
And then chapter 1, we went over talking about the mindsets, why people differ, what does this mean? Talked about fixed versus growth mindset. So anyway, again, we're just kind of talking. We went over chapter 2, what success is, mindsets change the meaning of failure. Chapter 3, artistic ability, the danger of praise and positive labels. And then we ended up with these. How do you see the mindsets impacting student success here at Chat State? How do you see these mindsets impacting your life? Because we want to apply them micro and macro. Now, obviously, we're all dealing with different things that we want to address. What in these readings resonates with your experience? We had some folks share a time when we embraced a growth or struggle with a fixed mindset, and Kim graciously talked about what did you mention, Kim? Can you go back over that briefly? Kim. Kim, no Kim here. You're not with us?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I mean, I talked about my father and my son.
Okay.
That's what I remember talking about.
Okay. Um, yeah. And then we just ask you to jot down and reflect on areas in your professional and academic and your personal life where a growth mindset could help you. So then next meeting. So chapter 4 is on sports. Chapter 5 is on business mindset and leadership. And so what I did was I added some experts in leadership. Some of these people you may have read, some of them you may not have read. I have a quote from John Maxwell that we're going to look at. Ken Blanchard, the 1 Minute Manager. You may be familiar with some of these books. Tony Robbins. I just typed in who are the 100 or so top leaders in business and just kind of wanted to look at what their mindset may have been. So we will begin to talk about that. Okay, for this week, we went over chapters 4 and 5, where we read them. And it basically talks about mindsets in teaching, coaching, and workplace environment. And Alice sent uh, an article about a girl at Hickson. Has that been uploaded, Keely?
I wasn't sure if there's a way to do that, but it was in Sunday's paper,
I
I
think
believe.
I think
And
it's been uploaded to the chat.
oh, okay, good.
Yeah. Um,
Interesting read as I'm reading all of this. It was kind of right here in River City. People are
okay.
using that growth
Yeah.
mindset and having a big impact on not just the player, not just the coach, but the team and others outside.
It was a great connection for our
Mm-hmm.
study. Keely,
Yes,
it
I
is in the
have.
chat.
It is in the chat, and thank you for sharing that, Alice. It was a good
Sure.
article.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's super timely. Okay, here's our food for thought for today. Have we ever considered the difference between management and leadership? According to John Maxwell, he's a noted leadership expert, a manager focuses on maintaining systems and processes, while a leader focuses on influencing people to follow, meaning that leadership is about inspiring and motivating people, while management is about organizing and executing tasks. Essentially, managers do things right, leaders do the right thing. And we are all managers and leaders in our own lives. You know, sometimes I think we have to be in charge of a company or a large group of people, but that's not necessarily so. So let's move to chapter 4, sports, the mindset of a champion. And I have the sub topics here. So I'm going to stop talking and let you jump in wherever you see fit, whatever your takeaways from this chapter is.
So some of my takeaways, I think one that stood out was the how when she talked about a superstar's talent can win games, but it's teamwork that wins championships. And that's oftentimes what we're taught in business school, um, is about winning, about making sure that everybody is on the right bus, supposed to be on the bus, and the people that's on the bus, making sure that you all are all working together as a team, and seeing the people that you work with as a team in honing in on their talents. And so that's one things that keep leaders set apart than you have managers. And so oftentimes, even at Chattanooga State, someone will come to me and say, Clemisha, how would you handle this? Because my department head and dean did this. And I have to remind them that I'm business. And so the way I will handle it is totally different than how your division handles it, because we look at it from different lens. So that was just one of the key takeaways that I saw when they talked about the athletes.
Okay.
I think it's probably difficult for some athletes because so much of it is self-driven, self-motivated, that they have to make a switch from self to team depending upon the sport that they're in. So I think that yeah, I mean, I think that the best athletes are growth oriented, and they realize that working hard and practice, and they're never too good for practice, and all of that. And I think, yeah, I mean, it made sense. It was really interesting her when she discussed the ones who would get to a certain point and plateau, and they couldn't adjust, to the changes. I thought that was pretty interesting. Um, so it's constantly revisiting your relationship to the sport, your relationship to the team, your relationship to the hard work that it takes, and all this other stuff. But yeah, I think that it's kind of, the kids who peak in high school, right? Uh, and then
Right.
they never, we make fun of those people. I mean, it's kind of a cliche, right? But it happens. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, I never knew who Billy Bean was until I read this. Tracy.
Yeah.
So make sure my hand's down. Kind of springboarding off what Kim was talking about. I think in sports, sometimes it's a little easier to see that competition. And what in that competition, is it from a growth mindset, or is it because I think I'm a natural and I'm wonderful? And I think in the teaching, business, nursing, even, education, we don't have those same measurements of who's doing well and who's doing not, who's winning the game, who's winning the championship, to kind of go back to talk like Clemisha did. And sometimes I think that when we're told we're winning, we don't know how we got there or who contributed. Or maybe we do. Maybe that's what our kudos are for. But I think kudos sometimes, well, that's not about growth mindset, really, sort of, kind of. I'm not sure where I was going with this, except, when you talk about success, I think it's easier to see success in sports than it is to see necessarily success in what we do, unless it's our relationship with our students and who actually, continues on, who actually graduates, who is a completer. I kind of rambled there. Sorry about that.
One of the ways we could look at it, I think, if we want to make a sports analogy, is that faculty, we tend to think of ourselves as the stars because we're in the classroom, right? And we have that. I mean, it's easy to see how what we do connects to grades and things like that. And then the students go on and get jobs. Okay, so it's a little easier. But I mean, could we do it without Alice? You know, people like Alice supporting us. Could we do it without academic advisors? Could we do it without, and so they're all part of the team, which is why the whole, which I don't perceive it because I'm faculty, but supposedly there's this faculty staff divide, right? And it's we shouldn't have that because we're all working towards the same goal. Um, so I don't know how things are at Chat State with regard to that. I've heard some grumblings here and there, but overall, I mean, I have pretty good relationships with everyone I work with, and so I don't. It wouldn't occur to me to treat Kendra Veal as less than me. She's busting her butt, advising and all that other stuff, and I don't know. So I
I'm,
think maybe if you think about it that way, that we have this big team and it's faculty and staff and administrators, and we're all working towards the same goal, but faculty some of them anyway, tend to think of themselves as deserving of a whole lot of credit. And I don't know. I think we're just sort of the last step in some ways
I'm
on the
glad you
student's road to
brought that.
success.
I'm glad you brought that up because toward the end of the sports chapter, it dawned on me, or a light came on that, we go into our classrooms, but in the same way, it is a team sport. It is a team
Yeah.
effort. I couldn't teach if it wasn't for Amanda or the dean or our supervisor, or the other day I couldn't figure out how to get my um, overhead to work. Not my overhead. How old am I? I couldn't figure out how to get the projector to work, and so I wrangled Brian, and then we brought in Drake. So
Yeah, I went and wrangled Drake.
It only takes 3 professors to get the projector to work.
Imagine screwing in a light bulb.
I can't. It wouldn't have
but it
happened.
took all of the. I mean, my class would not have gone the way that I wanted it to if it weren't for a team effort. So and I hope that there isn't. I see that sometimes there might be a disconnect, or hopefully there's not a divide, or at least the people that are here now begin to think of us as one college with one goal, that we all are here to help and support each other. But anyway, this made me think of that, Kim, when you said that.
I actually think that the business chapter is way more applicable than the sports chapter to what we do. But
Well, the
the
teamwork,
sports is interesting.
the
Yeah.
teamwork aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought I
That
saw
and
a
the
hand.
idea that as individuals, which we should communicate to our students, that even if you're good at something, you're going to at some point have to do something you're not great at, and how you handle that situation. And that's true of all of us, especially the older we are, the more relevant I think that is. And everyone hopefully is going to live long enough for it to be a problem. In that, when I first started teaching, there was no online, there was no Excel, there was no, I mean, there's a whole OER, and I've had to, every semester as I'm learning new skills, and it's really interesting, and I think it's a lot of fun. But some people are like, um, when have I mastered it? When can I just do what I already know? And the answer is never. Never. You just need to go live in a cave if that's what you want, because that's not how that works. And so we have to be willing to always work on our pitch or our batting or our base stealing or our 3-point shots, whatever applies to our jobs. And then we need to communicate to the students that you need strategies for when you get to something that you are not naturally good at. And for some of our students, they're like, yeah, I'm already there in this class. And for others, they have yet to encounter that. But
Right.
I don't know. That's how I would use the sports chapter.
People keep moving our cheese, right?
Really
If I can use
annoying.
that. And that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's Kelly put something very profound. I think sometimes it's forgotten that students are on the team. So that's a really, really good point. It's not us against them, though we may feel like it, but it's very good to think of them as part of the team as well.
And that's one thing that I liked about the sports chapter, was just about the teamwork, which I talked about initially when we came on, is that us changing our mindset to encompass everyone on our team. It's not them against us or us against them. That we're all here to serve students. We're all here to serve each other, and to make sure that we are doing whatever it takes to get people completed, so we can, in essence, get paid, continue to get a paycheck, because I believe that's how we get our funding, is through completions now. And so that is the goal for everyone, is to work towards getting students completed and making sure they're successful, that we give them successful information as they're here, so they can thrive once they leave Chattanooga State to their next place.
And as we do that individually, hopefully that bleeds out into our divisions and departments and into the overall college, right?
Right.
We succeed up. I was really taken. I knew how John McEnroe was. I don't think I know how bad he was. And I never equated it with mindset either. But I found that particularly interesting. about John McEnroe?
I have a hard time seeing McEnroe as a kind of negative example, other than the fact that he was a brat and very hard on himself and others. He had so much success, and he had to work to me, he obviously had to work so hard at it all the time. He seemed to me, if I were writing this book, I'd use him as an example of somebody who did not have a lot of talent and who really had to work very hard to get up to the level where he was actually winning, major tournaments. So I have a little bit of, that isn't my John McEnroe that's presented here.
Wasn't McEnroe the one who would have conniption fits?
He
Yes.
On
threw
the
his
court and
racket
throw
all the
his
time.
racket?
That's what I
Yeah,
remember
okay.
about him, all the time throwing his
Yeah.
racket and
I
yelling.
remember
Yeah.
that.
And he would do that because he was trying to get himself to work. I mean,
Right.
he was running into static situations, static mindset, and he just did whatever it took, conniption fit and all, to send the message to his body and his brain to turn it up. So to some degree, I think he's really a growth mindset as it plays out in the minute. And when you find yourself, your body's not working the way you want it to, and you have to slap yourself.
Okay. Yeah, it's on page 104. If you have your book or taking notes, 104, where every sport is a team sport. And that was the section that prompted me. Just about every sport is in some sense a team sport. And that's what prompted me to think that we are all on the same team. Can I throw my laptop? Yeah, but we're not gonna give you another one, Kim. Anything else on the sports chapter?
Stuff.
Let's see. Idea of the natural. Yeah, because even as teachers, staff people, no matter what you do, you always want to be getting better. Some of us, might be natural teachers or natural born. I think that just means bossy. But how do we continue to grow? We grow by reading and reading research and commiserating with our peers. So anyway, it's constant reflection, which is why I think it's important. I think I have feedback somewhere else, so I'm going to hold off on that. Anything
But
else on
don't we see some, ooh, okay, there's reverb in the airport. Some faculty who always blame the students when the students aren't learning. It's always the students. I mean, it's amazing that every now and then you'll run across a faculty member whose students are just getting dumber every year. Come on now. Look at what you're doing, and so I saw some of that. It's but it was again more in the business chapter, where everyone else is the problem, right?
Yeah,
And it's the students today, right? They're all cheating, they're all lazy, they all want participation ribbons. It's like,
they won't do what
yes.
we say.
Right,
Kelly, you have your hand up.
this generation, by God, they're doomed. And it's like, oh, come on, there's only one common denominator here.
Kelly,
You.
you have your hand up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we got. Sorry about that. Yeah, just a couple things. One, I mean, like we were saying, the generations. That every generation says that about every generation. I mean, not just since the beginning of time we're doing that, blaming this and that. So the one thing I want to say about like with the sports is it's some of us it seems like here we're not even in the same sport, much less on the same team. Like if we could even come together for what is this sport and to build up the student instead of, I wasn't even saying like it's them against us. It's like we should be bringing them to the top, and supporting them that way. And then where it mentioned NIAD, I happened to see there's a movie on Netflix, if any of you guys have Netflix, but it's called NIAD, the swimmer. And that's one of the things where she says swimming seems like an isolated sport, but it 40 people, to support her to be able to do that. So even when we look at this student, oh, this and that, they're cheating, they're lazy, whatever. Well, it could easily take 40 of us to get that one across the line, and if we could get in the same sport and really think of it that way, I think that would help the students, whatever our motivation is. I mean, that is the reason we should all be here. But I've played all kinds of sports. I had 3 different scholarships. So it takes everybody, to be able to do that. So I just wanted to share that on there.
Yeah, and when I was in elementary and middle school, it was the grade the grade before us didn't teach. If you're in 4th grade, it's the 3rd graders. If you're in 3rd grade, it's the 2nd graders. Why aren't they teaching? Uh, we point elsewhere rather than having
When
a
we do
group.
that, college does that, just the high school to the middle school teachers to the elementary. I mean, then now we're in the womb. They didn't play classical music. Oh my God. It's like, instead of, okay, well, how do we get them to the classical music now? How
Right.
do we do it? How do we do that now? So
Meet them where they are, right?
best we can. I kind of think all the faculty and staff here, everybody should have to take the bus to get to school. I think everybody should have to take the placement test, where people think, oh, they're not, doing great on the placement test. Well, they need learning support. Well, let's have our math people take writing. Let's have our writing people take math. Let's see what's going on, and then maybe that'd help with understanding to actually meet them where they are. Like, try to get here without your car. See how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alice?
take the bus route one day, Kelly. Take the whole 2 hour
Oh yeah.
route. Take the shuttle and
Mm.
see what it's all about. And it does that really does give a different perspective, as well as there were a number of us in the department who did take the our entry test, and it lets you know this is what they're seeing, this is what they're doing, and it shows you where they are sometimes, and sometimes why scores are so low. I mean, it helps give a better understanding. So yeah, I agree with that. Put yourself in their shoes.
Mhm.
Alice?
I was going to add, I think we've touched on a lot of this already, but just even before they get here, the process, the application, they aren't used to, just watching them start at the very beginning, and they don't know the terms. They've got to do registration, they've got to do orientation, they've got to do the test. We send them around because they might be unsure of their major, or they signed up for this version of welding, but they need the other kind of welding because it's in 2 departments. Just that's teamwork, getting people to the right places and walking them step to step. And that's even before they've started the game.
Yeah. Yeah, Kim, me too. I've taken the acuplacer. That was yeah, we should all do that. Anybody else?
So I kind of wanted to go off what Alice was talking about, and then back up to the silo part of our divisions, our departments, things like that. Is I think there's been an effort. I don't know it's been very successful to, like when we did the scavenger hunt at the beginning of the fall semester, just to force people to go into different buildings and see. Like for us, it's people are always amazed what we have in engineering. And my most hated thing, I hate to hear about anyone from another part of the college or from outside the college. You're a best kept secret. That's like one of my major things. I'm trying to not be a best kept secret. But I feel the same way sometimes, even though I think I know a lot of people over in Allied Health, and I think I've got that figured out. It's like, man, I didn't know you guys did this. Or some things even in the TCAT that they do. And I don't, there's just that, I don't know if it's a lack of information, or as Alice said, there's 2 different kinds of welding on this campus. And I get drug into a lot of times, should you do the TCAT diploma welding, or should you do for credit welding? What's the difference? And I find sometimes students, they don't even know what they want with welding or not. So if that's just one little example, how many more examples that I don't even know that I don't know? I'd like to
Good point.
know.
I enjoyed the scavenger hunt too. Alice, do you still have a question or?
Nope, sorry about that. Let me take that
Okay.
off.
I see Tab. Do you have? Nope. Okay.
I was gonna say I do agree with the scavenger hunt, and I do agree with the test. For me, in order to have that growth mindset and to move around, like when I do trainings and so forth, or meetings with the admin threes, I rotate. So it's never in the same place. We switch up buildings so people can experience other people locations, because it's not fair for one person to come to one area. This is like if you're hosting a meeting. So we know that most of us are right here in the IMC building. So instead of, if this would have been face to face, instead of saying, hey, we're going to meet in the IMC building, we would have met in each person's building to create that sense of belonging, to let everybody know, hey, this right here is this area, just to bring awareness, because we're so fixed on just because you have a meeting, I need to have it close to my office or down the hall. Get out your building and go experience another area, so that way you can know what's going on campus.
Okay. I'm going to transition. We can talk about whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide because that talks about business. Yeah, business and organizations and leadership and fixed versus growth mindset. I know it talked a lot about Enron. Um, I know who remembers that debacle, or Lee Iacocca. I think I may have read his book. All right, Clemisha. You heard of Enron. You probably know that. And then, of course, they talked a lot about Lee Iacocca, who was he was godlike in his status. So let's jump into business, I guess, because we kind of really are, aren't we? Anybody want to take that on? I'm gonna scooch because there's actually a lot. Group think versus we think. Our negotiators born or made, corporate training, our leaders born or made. And one of the things that I did here, if you can see that, I hope it's not too small. I Googled who are the top companies with the highest employee satisfaction, because I think ostensibly they would have to have a growth mindset if they have happy employees. Maybe not necessarily, but these are and I did this because, they were talking about Enron and a lot of companies that maybe we weren't familiar with. I also Googled company corporate scandals over the last 10 or 15 years. So these supposedly NVIDIA, Salesforce, Cisco, Adobe, Apple, American Express, DHL, Wegmans. I don't know a lot of these people or anybody that works at any of these companies, but what do you have to say about business? And I can go back and forth between these topics to who's Wegmans?
I
What's
want
that?
I want to so
Who
I
is
want so
Wegmans? Go ahead. Go ahead.
the so when it talks about Cisco, so when it talks about top companies who do well, where employees are satisfied, oftentimes it has to do with the culture of making sure employees are satisfied. So that comes from their workstations, their work from home, their hybrid models, all of that compensates into satisfaction of an employee. And so Cisco is the one in Atlanta I've been to. They don't have office spaces like how we have names on our office spaces. um what they do is they have a system where if you come in that day, you want to be in the IMC, for example, the IMC will show green on that door and you would just rent out that space. And so you can go in there if that's where you want to go. Or if there's a space in Omni, and it shows open, it's available for you to go in based off what you need for that day. Um and so employees like that, because sometimes you may need a space like the library, or you may need a space that's like those little incubators where you go sit in, you know, or you may need a space where you're going to need 4 or 5 people, or you just may need a space for just one person. And so what Cisco does is just make sure your workplace is, you know, is suitable for what you need for that day. um and so I think majority of the employees work from home, but if you choose to come in, you have the spaces available that you may need, and you just book it on your phone. Your phone will tell you if it's available or not. Another thing that they do is at every building or station, there's food. So snacks, drinks, coffee, water. So doing those little things to make employees, when they do come, they feel comfortable. And so that's how a lot of these companies become best employer. And then when they do the satisfaction surveys and people say, we don't like this or this, they actually change it, right? Because oftentimes when we have employee surveys, it's not to change it, it's just to say we did a survey. And I think that's the difference that sets apart, you know, companies that do well in employee satisfaction versus that don't do it. They actually listen and try to implement whatever the employees are saying.
So do you think that's indicative of the top management having a growth mindset? Okay.
Yes. Hmm. I think growth mindset plays a part of, when you think of leaders, leaders think of the future. They look at the bigger picture, and they're not looking at the day-to-day details, you know, to the point to where it's just, you know, scrutinizing people. They look at it overall, the big people, and people follow them, right? And so in order to be a leader, you have to have someone following you. So if isn't anybody following you and they don't like you for they're not following you, you're not a leader, you're just managing. And so oftentimes we have a lot of managers in companies instead of leaders. So that's why it's hard to change the culture, because leaders change culture and they do have a growth mindset.
And I think that we can all be both managers and leaders rather than making it a dichotomy. Hope y'all are reading the chat. There's some magnificent things going on in that chat. What is
Let me see.
Tracy? What is Wegmans?
Wegmans is a grocery store that will blow your mind.
Okay. Do we have
It's
one
it's oh no.
here? Okay.
I don't
It
I don't
is
know
it as good as HEB?
better. In a different way. I have to say that. I
Seriously,
love
HEB
HEB.
Central Market?
I love HEB, but this has more variety, believe it or not, than HEB. But in
Okay.
I don't know about the quality of the produce because HEB produce is just right there. But
Okay.
it's expensive though too. It makes Publix look like, you know, blue light special.
Ah, well, HEB's not that expensive. So.
No, different things. But yeah,
Anything else in business that anybody wants to touch on that really stood out in that section?
I just wanted to say, and we're having a lot of conversation about that. Is I think this is me. I think this is not based on any facts necessarily. That we, just as other businesses, put people in leadership positions that are not leaders, and they are barely managers, if that. And they seem to sometimes forget that, just what it was Tab or Kelly said, you know, we're here for the students. And
Mhm.
I love having a good time with my students. We're learning also at the same time. But I just don't think sometimes our leadership, whether or not they're leaders, I just don't think that they have their eye on the bottom line. Here's an example, and I see this all the time because I'm also, one of my programs is quality and improvement. We and I know we try not to, but it seems like we have our eye on the next year, the next semester. You know, we look at data from way years past, like we've done recently with Dr. Ashford, and that's a good thing, but we're not looking at how do we get somewhere in 10 years? How are we going to be somewhere in 40 years? that's a big difference in mindset and growth mindset that, quite frankly, those in Japan and some of those other countries down there have that we don't. And that's slowly going to erode us because we are so knee jerk, especially here in the US. And it's seen that way from other people in other countries. And I see the same thing with education. We're too quick to say, let's throw this at it, let's throw that at it, instead of how can we build this long term to be successful and have successful graduates that will be, we hope, happy in their careers that will benefit all of us. And maybe I'm sounding a little too progressive, but this knee jerk stuff is going to slowly hurt us, I think.
For some reason, I thought um, that I don't know what I'm going to say. I thought there was some group or some body somewhere looking at 5 years and 10 years. Isn't there a plan like that? Am I being naive?
That's the story of my career,
Yes.
actually, is
It-
5-year plans.
Yeah, I have it on my wall. Complete to compete. Drive to 55, right? That's what the governor, the last governor, this governor, how are we going to get 55% of our population with some sort of credential or graduate degree or undergraduate degree? And that's going to make us wonderful.
Okay.
Well,
That we're just looking how to get that number. We're not looking at the quality of it. You know, we'll have a
it's
bunch
sort
of people that's got a certificate and a degree, but I worry that it's almost too short. It's almost limited in time, even at, get 55 and what, 30 and something. I'm looking at it because I have it posted on my wall because I want to believe in it. So I look at it every day.
isn't some of the
Interesting.
problem though is that we respond to, I mean, we're responding to what's happening. So what we do is educate students, right? Which is a huge thing. We're not making a widget. Right. We're, it's not like we're not designing a phone. And so we're trying to prepare, infinite number of people for an infinite number of things, situations, and all that. And we don't know what's going to be needed in the future is the problem, right? So we have to sort of get people ready for whatever happens. And that's really difficult to do. Because what we do is it's not a business thing like cars and stuff like that. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking.
I agree with that. They're not a thing, they're not a widget, but there is a design process to look at how something will be used, when will it be used, what are, things that'll, like drugs. How many times are drugs used for what's called off label, like Ozempic and stuff like that? That was created for diabetes, not weight loss. Now there's so much more used for that. It's similar to that, but I do think there are limitations as far as thinking of a product, but I think that's why it's even more important we try to design. And I guess you're right, Kim, we're trying to make them, we're trying to have our students to be prepared for whatever life throws at them. But I just think that we're too short-sighted because I think there's more things that I just feel like we're behind in the US so many times because now it's AI, and it's like, are we going to get to Mars? Why do we need to go to Mars? I think sometimes in academia, we focus too much on getting a number, and not that a number's bad, but what's the best way to design for the outcome? And maybe that goes back to what you're saying. How do we design the students' curriculum so they have their best prepared?
Good points. That's some real food for thought. Laura,
Yeah, I
Healy,
since we're in the business chapter, I've really been so sometimes I'm on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll get things that hit my feed like Charlie Munger. who's Warren Buffett's partner, or he's passed away now, but I heard him say something the other day, and we're talking about design and how to design things for the student success. And just, he said that when he wants to turn around a company, he thinks about how to break it, what's going to make it fail. And so what he did, or his thought process was, he would think of all those things and go in and do the opposite. So he reverse engineered it. So if we keep in mind that, some students are taking care of their family, some students are working, we've got to, work in flexibility and coach them on how to time management for their assignments and study, things like that. So if we reverse engineer it and think about it like that, I just thought that practice was pretty neat since we're talking about design thinking.
Kind of reminds me of is it Marzano, begin with the end in mind? For those
Stephen
education.
Covey. Stephen Covey.
Stephen Covey, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Edgar Allan Poe.
No, not Edgar Allan Poe.
It is, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
It is. You can read the philosophy of composition. It's right in there. Begin with the end in mind.
I think I just learned something. Nevermore. All right, last slide. I think, yeah. Yep, this is the last one. And you can pick any one of these, or how can educators, that's us, staff and faculty, foster a growth mindset in students? Have you seen this happen successfully? How can staff and faculty model a growth mindset for each other? Dweck mentions that feedback is critical for fostering growth. What strategies do you use to give constructive feedback? And I put slate applause because we can do that as faculty. I know we're always real quick to jump in with they're not coming to class or they're failing, but do we give them applauses as well? And as we reflect on our varied roles at Chat State, what opportunities exist to encourage each other to embrace change? Clomisha, I saw your hand.
Yeah, so before we go to this slide, I want to
Okay.
discuss the slide before where it talked about groupthink. Groupthink happens at Chattanooga State just because of the processes that we have set in place. Because currently, the way the tenure and promotion is, the way you get promoted, if you don't agree or if you tend to disagree, you become off the like bus. And once you become off the like factor, sometimes you don't get desirable outcomes. And so oftentimes you find people agreeing, even at the highest levels, even with me sitting at the cabinet, I've sat there before, you find people agreeing even when they disagree. And from that level, even down to the division, people oftentimes agree to keep from having unfavorable outcomes. And so that's why I think groupthink happens a lot at Chattanooga State, is because people cannot share how they truly feel or oppose something, show opposition, depending on who it is, because it will impact you in your classes, when you teach, what classes you teach, and whether or not you may or may not get tenured, or if a promotion comes up that you're interested in, you may not get it because you're not on the like bus. So so we do have that issue at Chattanooga State. Don't think it's going to ever change just because the way our processes are set up and the way our culture is here.
Kristen?
Clemisha, I agree with so much of what you just said. I have so much to say, but I know we have limited time, so I'm not going to say all of it. But, you know, I think one of the best leaders I've come in contact with, the attitude was, I want you to feel safe in your workplace. What can I do as your manager, as your boss? What can I do to make you feel that safety? And so I think that relates to what Clemisha's talking about, is because when we think about things like tenure track and that, everybody should feel safe that if they're doing what they're doing, regardless if they're popular or not, or they're doing what is, if they're on the like bus, that that it's okay for them to have different ideas and different ways of thinking and different ways of doing things. And so I do think it's not just a problem at Chat State. I mean, I think it's part of the system that we're in, and that, you know, you shouldn't have to worry about how likable you are. You should worry, are you doing a good job with students? Are you are you creating a positive learning environment in your classroom? So, Clemisha, with what you said about the like bus and people, just make sure that you're doing what's likable. Like, that is not a safe work environment for people. And I do think there are ways to change that, because, when I hear that, I've heard that from other people, and that really, bothers me. Everybody in their workplace should feel that this is a pretty safe workplace, and I am safe to have different, unique, my own innovative ideas. So, but I'm not going to go on, but agreed.
Anyone else want to chime in? And I put the reflection discussion questions back up as well. Looks like we have some opportunities to encourage others and to embrace challenges, and to model a growth mindset for each other. I mean, obviously, if there are those of us that feel that way or operate in that paradigm, then it starts with us, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that's, I agree. And I was looking at what Tabitha wrote. How do we change and create plus foster a growth mindset? I think we do that individually. I think that's at the individual basis, each of us individually having leadership, which we can. We don't have to be in a leadership role to do, these basics of leadership, to let people know, you are safe in your work environment. You are, do what you're asked to do, and you're going to get there. And I also think that the people who have been here for a while, that it's our responsibility when we do see, some of these, whether they're injustices or wrongs, that those of us who have been here for a while stepping in and saying, wait, we are, we're evaluating this, not evaluating this. And so, individually, I think it starts at even lower levels for those of us maybe not necessarily in administration to exhibit leadership. So that's the way I think, is that we step up individually. We all know the right thing when we see the right thing. Right? We all know what the right thing is to do. Occasionally, 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 100 may not know what the right thing, but I think overall humans know what the right thing is.
Right.
We know
Looks
when we're
like
doing the right thing.
Looks like we've
Most of the
got
time.
5, and we may bleed over till our last session. Komisha, you have
So I
something?
want the how can educators foster a growth mindset in students? I think oftentimes the way you start your classes off helps students be successful in their classes. I teach business math, and so when it comes to math, students automatically feel as if they don't like it, they don't do well in it. And so I just first start off saying, if you come to class, you'll pass the class. If you come to class, you'll pass the class. And so this lets them know. I said, I promise you, the people who fail are the ones who do not come to class. But if you come to class, you will pass this class. And we will work together as a team and be successful. We will learn together. But I can't teach you if you're at home, because I'm not coming to your house. But if you come to class, you'll pass the class. And so setting that off, I think firsthand, when the class first starts, that's what we talk about. And students, they come to class, we have a great time. I make it fun. Like what Tracy said, it's engaging. And so students want to come. And I think that's how you foster, growth mindset, is by starting the class off, letting students know that you can pass this class and what you can do to pass it. And we're here together to work through it. Helps with success of students. And so if you look at my statistics, I think they public. If you go on business math, most of my students pass. I have a passing rate for business math compared to when before of me teaching it, the numbers were low. And that's just because you have to put them in a mindset that they can pass and they will be successful. And if you come to class, we're gonna work through it.
Here, here. All right, we have a final meeting next Monday, chapter 6. And I see that hand, Tabitha. Relationships, mindsets, and love. Chapter 7, parents, teachers, and coaches. Oh my, I couldn't resist that. Where do mindsets come from? And then changing mindsets. So I expect that there will be a very lively conversation. Was there one final point? We got like 2-3 minutes. This was great, y'all. I've learned so much. I've enjoyed this dialogue. Does somebody else have something else?
I did. I wanted to
Okay.
say, I actually had the growth mindset discussion with my class today. So I reminded them, because by teaching college success, that's part of one of the courses, one of the lessons inside of it. So it's just a point of redirecting the words and making sure that you don't speak down, because it's all about, like I told my class today, it's about speaking life to yourself and giving yourself those affirmations, whether you're in your car, in your mirror, before you come, because we have to do, we have to, hang on, let me decline. We have to encourage ourselves. And like I told them, never use the word stupid, never use certain words, because that's speaking negative to yourself. And no one woke up overnight knowing how to do everything. So you just remind yourself, you don't know how to do this right now. You don't know how to do it yet, because no one showed you how to become a teacher overnight. You had to learn. Everything is a process, but it's the way we, speak, the way we word everything and how we view it. So we have to be encouraged.
And with that, thank you all. I appreciate your time and energy and effort and conversation. And I can't wait for the final chapters. Y'all have a great rest of the day. Go get them. Thanks.
Thank you, William.
You're welcome. Thank you.